Nuno and João are partners from the Walking Mentorship, and they bring the inside look in the life of the people they walk with. The podcast Keep Walking With Me searches for potential solutions towards the best version of ourselves. Every month, we walk together with a guest. There is a disclaimer that needs to be shared. After listening to this program, you might feel the urge to step outside and go for a long walk. But don't worry, that is absolutely normal. Welcome to the podcast Keep Walking With Me. Today, we have another very special guest walking and talking with us. So let's start and ask, in a nutshell, who is Nipun Mehta?
Thank you, João. I'm happy to be here. Who am I? I think that's a big question that I've been asking my whole life. I would say I think I'm a seeker. I'm a seeker of the subtler truths of life. And the way I seek is through acts of service. So service teaches me to go from me to we, and in that we, perhaps even beyond to the field of us. So I have, I'm just that, yes.
Wow.
Oh, thanks.
That's promising for our conversation. Thank you.
Definitely. So let me start getting a little bit deeper here into what you do. So do you want to share with us what is ServiceSpace and how was it created and how does it work?
Yeah, sure. It was, I went to school in Northern California at a place called UC Berkeley. I got out and it was like the Silicon Valley gold rush at the time. Everybody was like, hey, this internet, it's an amazing thing. It's going to change everything. And there was a lot of innovation and creativity, but there was also a lot of greed. And there was a lot of, a lot of power play that goes underneath it. And we looked at all of that and we said, can we make good use of this moment in history? And so ServiceSpace started in 1999, initially by building websites for nonprofits. So a few of us just went to a homeless shelter and we said, we can't do what you're doing, but we can perhaps help you build a website. And when we came back, or when we finished that experience, the thing was that, there were two things to weigh. One was what we did, the impact work, which in this case was building a website. On the other hand, was our inner experience, what it felt like to give something that had, at the time, had a very significant market price. And so we said, wow, okay, well, at one level, we created an external ripple effect, but at another level, we created an inner ripple effect. And it was so clear to four of us that went on that first project that inner ripple effect was so much more powerful than the external ripple effect. And so then we said, how do we keep aligning with that inner ripple effect? How do we not, that felt like the jewel. And so we said, let's just, no matter what we do on the outside, let's keep that inner ripple effect intact. And initially it was 4 people, and then it became, 40 people, and then it became 400 people, and 4,000 and 400,000, like that. But we made it a commitment to not sacrifice that inner ripple effect. And the beauty and the power of that is that when my inner sort of ignition, my inner transformation, my regenerative intrinsic motivation, once it starts to multiply, and your inner transformation journey and your intrinsic motivators, and once they start to regenerate and we're both doing it together, it actually creates a very incredibly compounding effect. And so you may not see it at the level of, 4 or 5 or 10 people over 1 year or something like that. But when you have thousands of people over, decades, it's very, very clear that this is a different field of intelligence. So ServiceSpace started out building websites. Then we did vertical web portals. Then we started to do a lot of offline projects. And now there's a whole incubator of so many different projects, and a lot of which challenge the status quo in different ways. But underneath it, it is a movement of this inner regeneration. And that regeneration happens not by some magic, but by simply doing a small act of service. It sounds very simple. It sounds something like, it sounds, not just sounds, it's validated even by what a child can do. So a child will get this. A child will live into this. But somehow us adults, we are so smart that our systems are completely disconnected from this kind of a natural spirit. And so we have institutions that do that. And so we've been kind of basically saying, hey, we are a lemonade stand that just never grew out of it. Usually you do a lemonade stand and then you grow up and you get a job and you build institutions and all of that. We're like, we just stayed a lemonade stand for 25 years. And guess what? The intelligence of the lemonade stand is amazing. It's amazing.
Wow. Well, thank you, Nipun. Actually, I was listening and thinking that so much that you are talking, it's related with actually our leadership in our world and the way we influence others. But I have to say that in the last 7-8 years, I have participated in 2 experiences that at the beginning I thought you misspelled the word leadership. That was my first impression, because I read something like leadership. But no, it seems that you were right, because these leadership circles or pods, they actually invite you to come into a different experience, probably, of leadership. So my question for you is, what is the difference between leadership and leadership? And what led you here, to this situation? And maybe why do we need more leaderships than leaderships? Or maybe not. So it's a big question.
It is a big question. I think the simplest way to understand it is that I think typical traditional leadership is usually top down, is usually hierarchical, but more than that, it usually leads with transaction. So a leader, a traditional leader, a good leader, right? When you say this person is a great leader, they're able to coordinate so many people's inputs and take it into a very specific direction. We look and say, look, I have a 5-year plan. Here is my strategy, and you execute. So that your whole premium of a leader is your capacity to do plan and execute at scale. And that's what a traditional leader does. But for us, the motivation around laddership, so it's kind of a play on word, right? Laddership is how you support other people. So it's not just about you and your vision. Laddership is not leading with transactions, is not a management of transactions. It's actually a management of relationships. And what does it mean to lead with relationships? And when you look at the world outside, now that may have intrinsic value, which it did for us, which is why we were sort of leading in this way, particularly with volunteers, where it's all about relationships. But underneath it, if you look at the world and the rate of change, so you have, for instance, TV took 70 years to get to 100 million users. And you have, Netflix took 10 years. And ChatGPT took 2 months, and Facebook Threads took 5 days. So you have this rapidly changing world. And when things are changing so fast, plan and execute doesn't really make sense anyways now. So if it's like, how can you have a 5-year plan in this world where 5 years ago we had no idea that AI would exist in the ways that it does? And right now, if somebody comes and gives me like, hey, this is my 5-year plan, I'd be like, yeah, this is not a significant leader. This is somebody who's like cooped up in their head and they think they're going to do all this, and it's kind of meaningless because the rate of change is so fast. So I think there were 2 motivations. One is to move from transaction to relationship. And the other is to actually meet a world in which all these things are moving so fast that there is so much emergence. So how do you actually respond, not with a predetermined idea of where things are going, but really leaning into your capacity to hold change, hold rapid change, accelerated change, exponential change. And so both of these things kind of met. And I think that's why laddership is so popular. But for me, like, this is a very different inner skill set, of, like, if you have a group of people, right? Like, imagine you have a classroom of people. To try to get them to be coordinated in one direction, the traditional leadership route is, hey guys, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to get there, and this is the next steps, and everybody fall in line. The view from the front of the room is very different. And I imagine you're a leader in front of a classroom. The view is you're seeing others, and others are seeing you. They're seeing a very different view. The view from the back of the room is entirely different. So a ladder isn't in the front of the room, ladder's in the back of the room. But the advantage to being in the back of the room is that you see what everybody else is seeing, and your intervention isn't a muscular intervention, isn't an intervention of everyone saying, wow, you're amazing, no one could have done that because you saw the vision and you had the light. Here, you're able to see how all the different parts are related to each other. And you can just do a small, gentle intervention. So you do a small little, nudge, and all of a sudden that nudge creates a domino effect. Like it topples this, it topples this, it topples this, and pretty soon the whole classroom is different. But that you can only put yourself in that position if you actually have awareness of all the different relationships. And you can only have awareness of all the relationships if you don't have an agenda and you're just observing in the back of the room. So the premium goes from like planning and executing to searching and amplifying. And that's a very different skill set. So you're looking, it's like, it's not so much doing, it's more about seeing, because you have to search for the patterns of positive deviance. You have to tune into all the different relationships and what's popping where. And then you have to know the skillful interventions that will help amplify these patterns of positive deviance. And I think if we do that right, the advantage is not just that you get stuff done, but the advantage is that you are related. In that relationship, you awaken a collective consciousness that heals. And in that awakening of the collective consciousness, you evoke a larger field of compassion, which I think is our fundamentally natural state. So it's a very different frame of looking at a group of people and saying, I want to get there, versus looking at a group of people as a set of relationships and saying, hey, I don't know where we're going to go, but we're going to go together. So instead of saying what to grow here, this is actually one of my permaculture farmer friends in Vietnam. She's a pioneering farmer across Vietnam, amazing woman. And I said, what is the most common response you get, And she said something really beautiful. I asked her, what's the most commonly asked question you get from city people? And she said something so beautiful and succinct, and I think that sums up laddership as well. She says, instead of, she says, city people ask what to grow here, right? Like, what shall I grow here? What should I do? And he says, instead of what to grow here, what a permaculture farmer would ask is what grows here. Which means that if we are related, there is stuff happening in between our relationships that is co-creating, not just one-on-one, but at a many-to-many collective level. And can you tune into that? Can that be your guide instead of just your egoic intelligence, your singular intelligence? And that's a different frame, requires a different kind of leadership. And I think, so that's a long response to your question about what is laddership. it's a very different frame of leading, not with transactions, but with relationships that ultimately lead you to deep community, to a collective consciousness, and ultimately a fundamental compassion.
Wow,
I
thank you.
think it's a long answer, but still we had so much more to go on that. But well, let me look here into something else. You are also involved with the Daily Good, which is one of the branches of the ServiceSpace. So do you want to share with us what that is and how that has an impact? Because somehow I feel there's some relation here.
Yeah, I mean, Daily Good actually was the first project even before ServiceSpace. I started it. I had a job. I've had one job in my life, and they gave me a computer that was like on 24 hours of the day. So I actually sent out an email. This is like way back in towards the mid 90s, maybe a little after that. And I used to love quotations. And so I set up my computer to send a quotation, a random quotation every day to a few people. And that would just go out at 4 a.m. And so everybody would be like, Nipun, are you up at 4 a.m.? You're sending emails, this is before all of this, right? So I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then and these would be inspiring quotes, and so then I was like, well, why don't we just add a little bit of good news? Because I think sometimes you can, if you just read about people being selfish and greedy and violent, then you're like, oh, the world is just like that. But actually, if you look a little deeper, the world, yeah, there's a lot of suffering. But there's also a lot of people responding to the suffering with great compassion. And so we have to open ourselves to those stories as well. And so we would send out one bit of, good news every day. And that's just continued for a long time. After coronavirus, so that's Daily Good. But after Corona, after COVID hit back in 2020, the first thing we did, like 15 days into it, we launched, like in mid-March of 2020, we launched this thing called Karuna News. So it was a play on Corona, but it was the same kind of thing because you had so much fear. Everybody's like, oh my God, this virus is going to eat me up. And like, there's just, everybody's afraid. And then you saw people like, just responding, saying, oh my God, there's only one ventilator. There was this Italian guy, that priest, and he says, give it to that young man, like I would rather die and save his life because he's younger. He has many more years on him. And you just saw people like saying, oh, we can't have concerts, but I'm a musician. I'll be in my front porch and I'll just play. You saw even there was a very famous photo of firemen in like a paramedics, I think in Israel, where an Arab guy and a Jewish paramedic, they were both together, and in between all these emergency runs, they're like, this is time for prayer, and both of them are on two different sides, like praying together, kneeling on the ground. And you see that and you're like, wow, like, it brings people together. That compassion is a much greater thing than all the other labels that we have. And you saw like kids, like setting up a joke stand because everyone is so, serious about it. So we were like, everyone can give, and everyone was trying to give, but we didn't hear that in the media because the media was propagating this kind of thing. So Daily Good, Karuna News, Karma Tube was our response to YouTube, to just have inspiring videos. We just, we've been running a lot of these inspiring portals for a while, so it's been inspiring.
Actually, I probably have to share that I think I stopped watching TV. Now I can say this because for many years I work in advertising, and that would look very funny if a guy would say, I stopped watching TV, I think 21 years ago. And I remember that on that moment I decided to stop TV, to watch TV, because I was so upset with what I was watching on TV. And this is the moment when I actually, I think I Googled it for I want good news, only good news. And that's how I found Daily Good. And I'm very grateful, because the moment I have received this website, and I start receiving, I'm not sure at 4 a.m. or another time of the day, but it was kind of a switch, and it's your own decision. What do you want to feed your mind with? Your days, and it was a very conscious decision. I don't think I missed much during these 21 years of TV. Again, no offense to anyone working on TV, it was just a decision. And it seems that the news still get here. So, but maybe on this very positive note, maybe it's time, Nipun, that you can give us your first song for us to listen.
Well, let's see. So maybe the first song on that spirit of good news would be the song by Nemo called Grateful. It's an incredible song and Nemo is an incredible human being who went to Wharton Business School. He was at ground zero when 9/11 happened. He wanted to dedicate his life to service, and at some point he just went to the Himalayas and tried to find himself, and then he actually lived in the slums with just 2 pairs of clothes for 2 years with kids there. He gave up all music, and then he kind of had he had your kind of story, that he gave up all music because he had a whole music shop, I think, with like 60 staff and whatnot in Hollywood, and he says, this can't be it. Like, this can't be my calling in life. So in the external sense, he was famous and successful, but then he's like, no, I'm not going to do it. So he went in his own soul searching journey, and 6 years later, he had given up all music. And 6 years later, this song flows out of him on kindness. And the second song was this song on gratitude. So it's an incredible song.
All right. So let's listen to Nemo.
You're my life, you're my breath, you're a smile, you're my guest. You're the earth, you're the sun, you're the grass, you are love. You're my hands, you're a bug, you're my eyes, you're a hug. You're the light in the dark, you're the spark, you are fun. You're my mom, you are water, you're the stars, you're my daughter. You're my friend till the end, you're my dreams, you're my father. You're the ants on the ground, the miracles that surround. I'm feeling it all around, the hemisphere in the clouds. You're my pain, you're my sorrow, you're my hope for tomorrow. You're the strength when I'm hollow, you're the path that I follow. You're the blessings that exist, the small things that are bliss. The gift to realize that everything
all
is a
that
gift.
I am, all that I see, all that I've been, and all that I'll ever be is a blessing. It's so amazing, and I'm grateful for it all, for it all. Grateful for it all.
You're the blessings every time I try to count. You're the lessons that I learn every time I turn around. You're the water when I'm burned every time I think I found everything I'm looking for. You're the sign saying stop to take a bow and keep moving forward and start looking towards your heart. It'll open all the doors and only then you'll start to hear the world singing chorus with your mind and heart. Aligned in purpose, everything
All
will feel
that I
gorgeous.
am, all that I see, all that I've been, and all that I'll ever be is a blessing. It's so amazing, and I'm grateful for it all.
Every day I sit and pray cause what I have is more than I deserve or could ever imagine. How do I give back to all of this magic and spread the love so everybody can have it? Doesn't matter if I'm rich or poor, if I got a family or if I'm all alone. Bad things happen, I can just complain and moan, but there's a million things that I can be grateful for.
So I
see, everything I hope, and everything I dream, everything I feel, and everything I be. I'm grateful for it all. It's amazing. Everything I am, and everything I see, everything I hope, and everything I dream, everything I feel, and everything I be. I look through the town and feel all the blessings. Everything I am, and everything I see, everything I hope, and everything I dream, everything I feel, and everything I be. I'm grateful for it all. It's amazing. You're the blessings that exist, the small things that are bliss, the gift to realize that everything is a gift.
Wait, one more. This is for y'all.
All that I am.
All that I see.
All that I've been.
It's a blessing.
It's so amazing.
I am grateful.
Well, thank you very much, Nipun, for sharing this music with us. We'll shift gears a little bit here, or maybe not. How can we survive in a gift economy? I mean, when governments keep measuring everything in GDP, is this even possible?
Well, the thing is that it's, if you look and you say, well, how can I pay my bills if I just live on kindness? I think it's one too many hops, right? It's like, what would life look like if we were all kind, if we were all sensitive, if we were all connected in a deeper sense of reciprocity beyond transactions? But when you are trying to seed something that is emergent, that you cannot possibly imagine, I don't think it helps to go straight to the end. I think it helps to look at the building block. So I think Nicholas Taleb wrote a book called Black Swan. And so he says all the major events that have shaped human history have all been unpredictable events. So in hindsight, it looks like, yeah, hey, this happened and this happened and this happened. But like in foresight, we have no clue. And we've not been able to predict anything. So in that sense, it's like, can we create a black swan of kindness and compassion? And so can you imagine that if I am kind to you, if I am generous, if I'm giving to you, instead of transacting, instead of me giving to you and you going to a store and saying, here's my $5, this sandwich is owed to me. Instead of that, can I pay for the person after me, right? Can we all sort of pay for each other? And we tried this at Karma Kitchen, was this restaurant where we said, we said we all believe in kindness. That's great. And we do small acts of kindness. I think that's fabulous. Now, what happens if you change the rules in a closed space, like a restaurant, and you walk in and your check at the end of the meal reads 0 because someone before you has paid for you and you are trusted to pay forward for people after you? So I'm paying for somebody after me, and that person is paying for somebody after them. And then imagine all of us sitting in a circle and everyone is giving a shoulder rub, but not in a transactional way to the person in front of them. So I still get my shoulder rub too, but for somebody behind me, right? And so you look at that and you say, is that a better way to operate than to do a transactional, like I scratch your back, you scratch my back? And you say, well, maybe not, because if I do that, like I may give a great shoulder rub to the person in front of me, but the guy behind me didn't really give me that great a shoulder rub, right? So I felt like I lost out. Like I gave a lot and somebody gave me very little. And you say, is that worth it? But the mathematics of it changes because what you get in return is the circle.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas in a transactional thing, you never got the circle. So you might have a mismatch. Sometimes you might get more than what you're giving. Sometimes you give more than what you're getting. But what you get are the relationships with each other. And that circle, that community actually gives you so much resilience. So you look at that and you say, can the whole world, this was your question, Joel, can the whole world operate like this?
Yep.
Can I survive without transaction? And I would say that that's a question of emergence, that you have to wait for your inner conditions because everyone has different inner thresholds and different inner capacities of how much they're willing to give. If you're Viktor Frankl, you would be in a concentration camp and you'd still, be interested in giving. If you are, there are so many billionaires who would feel like, I don't have enough. I need still more before I can start giving, So different people have different inner thresholds. And then you have outer thresholds as well, right? Like, and then you have systemic thresholds. And so all of these things need to come together for a mini gift economy to kind of take root. But in many families where, a family where there are good relationships, you see this kind of gift economy play itself out. Like my dad has never said, like I have fixed your car 100 times growing up. How are you going to pay me back? Right. My mom hasn't said, I've changed your diapers 1,000 times. Like, how are you going to pay me back? And I haven't done stuff for them saying, well, this is transaction. Now I'm done with you. It's a mini gift economy.
Yeah.
And so you look and you say, well, we all have those impulses. We all have those ways in which we engage, not in direct reciprocity, but indirect reciprocity.
Yeah.
That I give, I am giving to you. I give to my dad gives to my mom gives to my brother gives to me. Like we don't have a ledger of how all this works, and we understand that. And you say, wow, can a society have more of this? And how then, and then of course we hop like 20 steps, right? And we're like, oh, I hate my job and I hate my job. Oh, I hate my boss. And so it would be great if I didn't have to worry about money. And but that's a very different conversation. That's not this. This is saying that can I practice an act of generosity without any condition? If you can do that, you are seeding a gift economy for someone, somewhere, somehow. If you can just do that, to move from direct reciprocity, which is to say, what am I getting in return, to suspend that thought, is the beginning of a gift economy. And even if you cannot imagine a whole world doing that, if you can be principled and say, I am committed to doing this because somewhere, somehow, this is planting a seed for a tree to grow, a different kind of tree to grow. And even if I'm not there to sit under the shade of the tree to receive to eat the fruits of what goes under there, I want to plant that seed. Now, that kind of person, over time, you run into an equilibrium of relationships, your inner capacities, and external systems. And when you hit that equilibrium, you will, and I know many people like that, who don't charge for any of their labor, and they are able to survive. But is that a copy-paste solution? Can we say, well, this is how Nuno can do it, replicate it in his context? It's not, because there's so much of your inner component, there's so much of your relational component in your context that is factored in. So you just have to, the process is not, it's not a recipe that you then take over and manage. It's more of the process, and the process starts with being generous, being kind without condition. It is sustained by being kind and generous without condition, and it ends with being kind and generous without condition. So it is the beginning, the middle, and the end. And you have to surrender the outcome. And so to ask that question, it's a reasonable question, but it's not really the best question to hold, because it comes from, your own desires. Like, I wish I could be out of this transaction, and I wish I could just be taken care of so I can enjoy a walk in the sun.
Yep.
That no one cares for you to go out and walk in the sun. People care for you if you are relevant to the matrix, if you are contributing, if you are sharing, if you are giving. And if you are doing that, you will naturally build all these relationships. And if all those relationships are built, you will naturally, someone's cup of gratitude somewhere will overflow and you'll be taken care of. When that's going to happen, how that's going to happen, you have to surrender all of that. And that takes inner resources to do. So yes, I think it's possible to get there. But I think it's to ask that question is to kind of bypass and say, I want to perform at the Emmys. I'm practicing singing so that I can go straight to the stage. It's a journey. But the beauty of it is that the simplicity of it is just be kind and generous here, in the middle when it starts working out, and at the end, and that's it. So it's kind of simple in that way.
Super. Thank you, Nipun.
That
Very
sounds
inspiring.
beautiful. Yeah. Well, Nipun, I've read that you wrote somewhere, when one foot walks, the other one rests. And I love the image, not only because we love walking, but really I felt it so poetic. So I would love to have your take on that.
Yeah, that was I think I wrote that. I think my mom told me that, but it was my wife and I went on a walking pilgrimage across India back in 2005, and it was back when I had hair. You know what I mean. It was you realize that all these things are in balance. When one foot walks, the other rests. And when we are being, we are doing. When we are in leadership, we have to be in leadership, and vice versa. There's the yin and the yang, and the yang and the yin. Like, it all kind of has to go together. And so it's not a fundamentalist position of one or the other. It's just seeing the spectrum, that sometimes you need effort and sometimes you need surrender. And so sometimes you need conviction and sometimes you need humility. And so, like, across everything, sometimes you need to give, but sometimes you need to take care of yourself too. Because, you gotta, as that saying goes, oxygen mask, you gotta make sure you take care of yourself first before you take care of others. And in others, you are included as well. And so it's like there's self-sacrifice and self-compassion. There's spectrums of everything. And there's spectrums even across, like, institution building. Right? Should you go fast? Should you go slow? Should you scale big? Should you, stay small? Right? Like, you can go down the list of all of these things, these raw ingredients, and you realize that it's all has to be in harmony. And for it to be in harmony, it's a yes and, it's not an either or. Mm-hmm. So one foot walks and the other is resting. You are being and you are doing. You are holding. It's always a yes and. And I think that helps you not be so fundamentalist about any position, in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Nipun, your high school goal, I think, was to either become a tennis pro or a Himalayan yogi. So what happened to you that changed your ideas? Or do you still plan to lead the ATP tour one day?
Yeah. I failed in both. I'm not in the Himalayas and I'm not on the tennis courts. But that's true. I used to want to be a tennis pro. And I used to also want to be like, go to the Himalayas. I kind of always have had this draw to the Himalayas. I don't know why. So it's, that's always been there. Like I said, I think I was a seeker. Like I'm always asking questions and trying to see is there something beyond the apparent reality? And now there's a lot of neuroscience behind it. So I would say there was that spirituality calling me to Himalayas. And then tennis, I have no idea. I just kind of became, you know, like this big old tennis guy. I used to play a lot, like probably 6 hours a day. I used to, you know, I dropped out of college to play tennis, and I never quite, I think I played one pro tournament, but I was, you know, I lost in the first round, and yeah. So yeah, it was I was decent, but it was interesting. I think I was gifted in school, but I didn't want to do school stuff. And I was not a gifted athlete, and somehow I wanted to do that, you know. So that was part of the game. But yeah, I wouldn't trade it for a thing, because I learned so much about what effort is, what, you know, even the coach that I had was probably, he was a mystic of the Christian faith, very deeply embedded in that faith. And I think he taught me a lot just by the way he was and who he was. And so I still have tremendous gratitude for him. And all the things I learned. I think I learned a lot about effort and surrender. I was talking about that. Like, I tried hard. And my coach would always come and tell me, you know, it's like, Nipun, drop your mind, drop your mind, drop your mind. And I would be like, what the heck does that mean? What do you mean, drop my mind? I'm not carrying my mind. You know, at that time, I didn't even understand. He's like, just let the wisdom of your body. So he would like belt these tennis balls like a short distance straight at me. And I'm like, Jeff, man, like, yeah, I'm gonna get hurt. You keep doing it. He's like, don't operate with your mind and then mind going to your, it's like, just be natural, like, just like, you know, allow your body to be fluid with it. So yeah, I have tremendous memories of you know, of growing as a person because of tennis. But yes, it was a giant failure club experiment. I didn't make it in that world. But yeah, I did drop out of college to try though. So yeah.
All right.
And for sure you learned a lot. So not a loss for sure. Well, let me shift here a little bit into a different angle. We would love to know, what is something that gives you hope?
You know, interestingly, I was once at the Obama White House, and they asked this question. I was on one of his President Obama's Council on Poverty and Inequality, and at the very first meeting, they asked this question, because Obama was his whole campaign was around hope, and so they asked this question around, what is it that gives you hope, as a way to introduce the whole circle. And these were like very significant leaders. And I was like, how the heck did I get in this room? You know, that kind of thing. I mean, actually, when I first got the email, you know, it's like they sent like this cryptic sounding email. And I was like, oh, this is spam. Like, why would White House be writing to me? I'm like, yeah, right. Like, and my name is Mahatma Gandhi, you know, like, sure, you know. But it ended up being true. And I ended up going there, and they asked this question. And then when they asked this question, it so happened that like it was a round oval table, you know, and I happened to be sitting right next to the person. And so they were like, and we'll just go clockwise here. And so, sir, what would you say? And I'm like, oh my God, like, I haven't even thought about it. What do I say? You know, what gives me hope? But what I said, and I think it's still true for me, what I said was, what gives me hope is the human beings and all life really unfailingly responds to the advances of love. Unfailingly. And what I said then was an example I had read in the New York Times that very day. they reported that somebody paid for coffee for the person behind them. And then it sort of became a thing. And 200 and some odd people continued the chain because they said, oh my God, like we stand for this. We want to respond to love with greater love. We want to respond to generosity with greater generosity. No organization, no agenda. It was just the human heart unfailingly responding to the advances of love. And I think that's true. This has been true in my experience. This has been true, you know, I think even historically. I mean, I think there have been periods in history where we have sort of lost touch with that intrinsic motivator, but I think it's still in us. And I think given the right context, it shines, and that gives me tremendous hope. I mean, I was at a car mechanic guy the other day, and I was in an area where I didn't know anyone, and my car air tire pressure was low, and so I had to go in, and I didn't know the place where to go. And I'm like going in to this random guy. I said, hey, do you know a place where I can, you know, fill up air in my tire around here? And the guy's like, oh yeah, dude, just come on in. I could do it for you. You don't need to go anywhere. And I was like, okay, well, that's really sweet of you. And so then he like looked and he did it, and he was just super smiley. And then I realized I'd left my wallet at home, and I'm like panicking. I'm like, yeah, I should, you know, I don't know what this guy's going to charge me. Maybe he thinks I'm a customer or whatever. And I wanted to pay too. And I was like, I don't have my wallet. And I'm like kind of panicking. I said, even if he doesn't ask anything from me, I mean, it would be a small amount, but nonetheless, I wanted to give him a tip or something, you know. And I'm like looking, and I'm like sort of like, oh my God, like of all days, I forgot my wallet, you know. And this guy sees that, and he's like, oh, don't even worry, man. This is on me. This is on the house. You don't need to pay anything, you know. And I was just like, I was really taken aback. It was random. I do this all the time to other people in a way. I believe in this, but nonetheless, it still felt amazing, right? It still felt like, wow. And then I wanted to my heart responds to his love. And I'm like, well, do I have anything else? You know, I probably do. And so I found a little heart pin made by women in the slums of India. And I was like, look, man, this is all I got, but it's from my heart. And you're clearly a person of heart. And I gave him this little heart pin. And he then goes to his other mechanics, and he's like, look what I got, you know, and he's like showing it to everybody. And then he's like, this is going home with me, you know. So yeah, I could have given him $5, but like this meant a whole lot more. But it was him responding to life with love. It was me responding to that love with love. And it was him responding to that whole relationship and saying, hey, I'm going to actually pay it forward and share this heart pin with my family members, you know. So I think that's what gives me hope. I think that's real.
Well, Nipun, maybe to give us or continue to give us hope, maybe it's a good time for you to give us your second song.
Okay, that's a good place to do it. Let me see. What is it that gives me hope? I think I'll go with this song by Ayla Nerio, a song that just recently came into my periphery. Ayla so my sister-in-law is going through chemo, and she had memorized the lyrics of this. And so to cheer her up, we actually made a music video of Ayla's song. And what I love about this song is she says, we are born of dust and silence. We are made of ancient song. And that's, I think, you know, that's another way of saying we are born of love, man. It's an ancient song, you know.
Well, let's listen to Ayla and enjoy.
Turn you a bent bone, weary wandering soul, and born upon a body you can never own. Rolling you along, bent sideways, tumbling a mother giving loom. You knew it when you flew in, shuttling. Weaver, you are gold bent, but do your strings hold the strength of what was given when you flew in? Burn, you burn in your own home. Some days could you live a little lighter, give a little water, give a little eye to eye. See from what you make, got a little shadow in your wake. Waking is the way you grow this, know this. Gotta matter to be paid, met and giving it away. This the truth we're being shown, told is all we've ever known. What another truth you gonna hide, baby? Finding that you're choosing every moment, looking through the frame they're giving you. There's a turn from the fear, a stand for the free, a song for the beat down, picking up steam. You will hear my voice here singing. There's a lead from the greed, a gift for the kind. I'll be dancing with the ones who remind me we are born of dust and silence. We are made of ancient stone, and there are ones who keep us sleeping, and there are ones who bring the dawn. Put your back to the verge and your mind to the matter of a listening kind of way. We are born of dust and silence. We are made of ancient stone. Rose upon the shoulders of the shoreline, eyesight creeping round the edges of the known. You've known it from before your sight was shown, shifted, and they told you not to talk of this. But you remember in your sleep all the ones that you could see, raising candles to the sky, through the forest dark as night. Wide-eyed, keep stride, this the path you're being shown. Sure thing, keep singing to the ones you're walking on. They the wonder, you the stars they look upon. You are clouds to them, giving harm or giving form. Do we greet them with our grace? Do we run or do we face the ones who helping us to heal our choice and choose again? Cause there's a turn from the fear, a stand for the free, a song for the beat down, picking up steam. And you will hear my voice here singing. There's a lead from the green, a gift for the kind. I'll be dancing with the ones who remind me we are born of dust and silence. We are made of ancient stone, and there are ones who keep us sleeping, and there are ones who bring the dawn. Put your back to the verge and your mind to the matter of a listening kind of way. We are born of dust and silence. We are made of ancient stone. Born of ancient soul. Bade farewell, all you've been told. Waves are rising, you to shore. It's not what you say, what you think, it's a walk in the way that you do. So you give what you give, what you give, what you give, what you can, what you give. Give what you give, what you are, what you give, what you give, what you can, what you give, what you give, what you are, what you can. You will hear my voice here singing. What you can, what you give what you. I'll be dancing with the ones who remind me. What you can, what you are, give what you want. I'll be dancing with the ones who remind me we are born of dust and silence. We are made of ancient stone, and there are ones who keep us sleeping, and there are ones who bring the fashion your mind to the matter of a listening kind of way. We are born of dust and silence. We are made of ancient
Well, thank you, Nipun. This song, I think it will be on repeat in many playlists for sure for a very, very long time. We would like to talk a little bit about your relationship with nature. I mean, you just mentioned that a few months after your marriage, you and your wife embarked on an open-ended walking pilgrimage across India. So the question is, after 1,000 kilometers, are you still married? No. What have you learned? That was the question.
This is actually what my uncle said. My uncle is like, man, if me and your aunt, when we went, we would be divorced on day 2, you know?
So what have you learned after these 1,000 kilometers?
Well, first thing is that such things should come with a warning label. Do not try at home, you know? Yeah, my wife actually inspired me to go on this pilgrimage. She said, we started this stuff. I kind of left since my early college days. I was like, accumulating money is not really for me. It's not my calling. I want to live simply and I want to live a life of service. And so I did that. But along the way, what ended up, ServiceSpace kind of took a life of its own. It was initially, we just started with no plan. None of us had ever done anything. We didn't have a vision of like, let's start a movement or anything like that. But it became quite popular. The first time we got to be on TV, it was CNN Live for a half an hour. And we didn't even know how to get on CNN. We hadn't pitched any story to anybody, but it just kind of came. And so it kind of took a life of its own. And after a few years of this, my wife is like, well, we did this to renounce, and we have to a certain degree. But how do you make sure that although we didn't have money, there was still a lot of influence, right? Like there were so many people and there was this kind of there's potential of a certain kind of treadmill that you're still on. She says, how do you know that this hasn't got you? And there's only one way to find out. Can you let it all go? And if you can't, you talk yourself out of it. That means you're had, it's got you. So I was like, oh my God, like this is one of those things where there's just only way out is through. And so we decided 6 months into our marriage, in fact. Of course, I had known my wife, many years before marriage, but 6 years into our marriage, 6 months, we sold everything we had, put a few boxes at my parents' house, went to the Gandhi ashram because Gandhi was inspiring for us. And we said, we're going to walk south, eat whatever food is offered and sleep wherever place is offered. And, that's an intense thing. Like, it's not like, for instance, I mean, you guys are in Europe. My wife has done Camino de Santiago a couple of times after that. But that's like a scripted path. Or you'll have in the East, you'll have a lot of monastics who will do a certain kind of, pilgrimage route. But it's easy to tell that these are like monastics because they wear orange or white. And so here we were, just two average young looking people, literally having no plan, just like going from one place to another. And our commitment was the only way you survive, right? Joel, this goes back to your surviving gift economy thing. The only way you survive, the algorithm is simple. do small acts of kindness. When you do, you will be related. And if you have 20 of those relationships in a day, one of them is going to be thinking about you and saying, hey, where are you eating? Hey, where are you going to sleep? And then you'll get what you know, and then you have to learn to embrace what you get in return. And so, yeah, I would see an old man walking with a haystack, and I'd be like, hey, you're like my grandfather. Can I carry your haystack for you? Lighten your load just for a little bit. You saw people like vegetable vendors in their carts, and you're like, oh, can I push that cart for you? You saw like a bunch of, in a village, you'll see a bunch of trash on the ground somewhere. You just start cleaning it up. Why? Just so you have a clean place. And as you do that, you are serving people. And so people will be related to you. And some of their cup of gratitude will overflow, and you'll be taken care of. I mean, that was the experiment. And so when you do that, I mean, it's intense. And sometimes you're not going to get what you want, but you'll get what the ecosystem wants you to have. So you could have a poor, like one man came up to us, he had nothing. He says, I feel like you're God's people. I mean, he just saw everyone as God's people. And so he probably looked at us and says, you're like God's people. Can I have the honor of having you in my house tonight? And we were like, yeah, buddy, we've got no plan B, we would love to come to your house. And he's like, but I'm very poor. I don't have in India, you call it a pakka house, which is like with cement walls, or he says, I don't have strong walls, as in they would just have a tarp sometimes, and they would have straw hut and all of that. He says, and I don't have running water or electricity. But I would, if you're okay. And I was like, yeah, man, it's all good, dude. I'm in, we're in, like, and we went, and it was quite a bit off our path even. And we go to his small hut, and he tells his wife, hey, God's people have come to our doorstep. Can you make some food? And later I learned that they actually borrowed food to feed us, because they ate very, very simple food, and they were barely getting by, but they were like, okay. And they made a little sweet. So they only have rice and this lentil soup, and the lentil soup is very spicy. So you don't have that much, they can't afford vegetables. But because we were guests, they went into more debt to get like this sweet, and not get, but make. They got some flour, and they made a little from that dough on like wood over there, which had fire on it. And I was very hungry that day, and I also have a soft spot for sweets. So I saw the sweet. Usually you would have a sweet at the end, and it was served together on this little platter. And I got greedy, and I said, I'm going to have to eat sweets first. And so I ate that. And it was very simple sweet. It was just like flour with sugar in it, but I knew what it was, and I was like, fine. I mean, like, I wasn't even getting that, right? So I was like, yes. And I go to eat it, and I realized there was no sugar in it. They couldn't afford sugar. And I remember it so vividly, so clearly. I said, Nipun, are you tasting their sugar, or are you tasting their love? Are you eating their sugar? Are you eating their love? And in that state, every day to go through stuff like that, and then my wife, of course, was the proper person, and she didn't have the dessert up front like me. I finished all the dessert first. And then the man of the house who had seen us on the street, he also finished his food, and he saved the dessert for later. He had the dessert, and he saw that there was no sugar. And he tells his wife, Says, God's people have come to our doorstep. Can you go borrow some sugar? And she did. You know, like I could still get teary-eyed thinking about that moment because, you know, there's so many ways to parse that. Like, do you sit there on your high horse and say, you know, you don't need to go in debt for my food? Or do you come back the next day and say, here's a whole this or that or what, you know? Or do you just be humble and just be like, I am receiving his love. And this is not time for my complicated head to bring in its theories. This is time for me to make a commitment that just as he honored the good in me and served the good in me, that may I have that commitment to pay forward. I can never pay back that love. I can buy him a mountain of sugar, but that would still pale in comparison to the love with which he and his wife treated me and my wife. And you cannot pay back. That's the wrong question. You have received this unconditional gift, and now it is for you to honor that, to receive it fully, and to then pay it forward. Keep paying it forward. And then you look back and you say, oh my God, I have been the recipient of so many such gifts. Your mother's love. For those of us who are lucky enough, how do you pay that back? Like, what do you say? I'm going to take care of you when you're old, this, that. Like, it's so cheap. You cannot pay back. That is the wrong question. You have to just pay forward. And so how can my life be an ode to that gratitude? And so I think that was a lesson we learned day in and day out. And it deepened my commitment to paying it forward. And it deepened my commitment to what's possible, to realize that, man, don't go by the glitzy headlines. Like, people making a difference in the world sometimes have absolutely nothing. Like, I saw a guy in the slums who would, like, 6 o'clock, and he says, oh, I got to go. I said, where are you going? And he's feeding the birds on that tree. And I'm like, dude, you can't even afford your own food. You're feeding all these birds. He says, oh, of course, I would rather starve, but not let those birds, get their food. I can't do that. I said, why not? And he says, oh, because my great grandfather started that tradition and he taught us to be kind. And you're like, oh my God, like when you search for givers on Google, do you get any of these people? No. Like, but these are givers, man, of the highest order. And you're like, yeah, I want to be like that. I don't care to be on Google, Hasn't quite worked. I am on Google, but still, It's so to me, it just opened up a whole new possibility of what generosity, compassion, love is. And it's the untold story of humanity.
Yeah, super inspiring. And just connecting to that, and not to be described on Google, but how do you hope people will describe you? Not on Google, just, the people you cross with.
Sometimes people early on, people would ask, they would like, when you go to parties and stuff, like, or gatherings or circles, people always do the business card thing, or they'll say, hey, so what do you do, Nipun? And I'm like, yeah, well, I volunteer. And so they would be like, okay, yeah, that's sweet. Like, what do you really do? And I would be like, well, I actually really volunteer. And they would be like, okay, next. Like, I don't need to talk to this guy. He's clearly someone insignificant, And so I think you, at some point, now it's a slightly different story because ServiceSpace is so established. But at that time, over those years, I used to tell my friends that, if I died tomorrow, and if I were to have a, epitaph, that should just read, here died a man who tried to be recklessly generous. That's good enough for me, man.
That's cool.
Maybe I failed, maybe I didn't, but you know, that's good, dude. Like maybe I was stupid and I didn't collect anything for myself, or for whatever, you know, things, but like he tried to be generous. That's good enough.
Sounds wonderful, actually. And maybe you can share with us a generous music.
That's a good segue here. I will go with this song. It's a poem by Rumi, and we had a retreat at Gandhi Ashram just a couple of months ago, and this woman sang it. It's not a professional song. There are many professional versions of it, but I was really touched by her. She is an Irish woman, and she sings this Rumi poem. It says, "Come, come, whoever you are. It doesn't matter, even if you've broken your vows 1,000 times. Come." And I think of that song right now because I feel like that's how that old poor man, financially poor, spiritually very rich, brought me into his hut, brought me and my wife into his hut and treated us like royalty because we were just alive with that love. So I'll this is by Jacques O'Keefe, singing a Rumi poem with no musical instruments.
Well, let's
Listen to it.
do it.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, and come, come, whoever you are. This isn't a caravan of despair. It doesn't matter if you've broken your vows 1,000 times before, and yet again, come again, come, come again, come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, and come, come, whoever you are. This isn't a caravan of despair. It doesn't matter if you've broken your vows 1,000 times before, and yet again, come again, come, come again, come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, and come, come, whoever you are. This isn't a caravan of despair. It doesn't matter if you've broken your vows 1,000 times before, and yet again, come again, come, come again, come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, and come, come, whoever you are. This isn't a caravan of despair. It doesn't matter if you've broken your vows 1,000 times before, and yet again, come again, come.
Well, thank you, Nipun. I mean, we are entering the last bit of our conversation, which sounds still very short. It sounds that we just walked a few meters out of a 1,000-kilometer journey, but few meters is definitely better than nothing. So thank you. Actually, this last section, usually we also call it unfair questions. So let's hope not. So if you could take off on any adventure today, no restrictions, no constraints, what would it be and why?
I mean, at one level, I would say I would go to the Himalayas, but I think I found the Himalayas in my backyard. So I really would be right here exactly where I am.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Another unfair question is, what are we missing as humans, if we are missing anything as human beings?
I don't think we have faith in intrinsic motivations. I think we somehow think that to use money, power, fame to motivate action is more reliable than to use intrinsic motivations like compassion. And so I think we would be better off if we move from being market funded to being nature funded. Nature rewards you every time you do a small act of kindness. Immediately, you have oxytocin released in your body, dopamine, serotonin, all these endorphins. Like it's nature's endowment. Nature is gifting this to you because this is how we are wired. And so I think we need to design for that. I hope we see the limitations of extrinsic motivators and learn to marry them with intrinsic motivators.
Well, Nipun, one last question.
Is it an unfair one or a fair one?
It's a beautiful one because we repeat this. I think we have been interviewing these incredible people like you for maybe 3 years, and we keep this question. This question never goes. It's always there. Maybe one day, I keep saying this, that maybe we should really do this. One day we should just make, I don't know, a book, whatever, just with the answer of this last question from all the people. So if you had a time capsule, and we'll shoot this time capsule into the universe, and I don't know, tomorrow, 1,000 years from now, someone or something, some entity will open up this time capsule. What message would you place inside?
Oh, I would say that we were experimenting with love and we saw glimmers of its possibility. Because I think underneath all the things that we are all doing, even though it may seem misguided and violent and polarizing at times, as so many things today do, I think underneath it, it's a search for love. I think it's an eternal search. And so I think if we were to say, look, we're kind of, in our teenage years as humanity, and we are searching for love, we found a few good reasons to believe in it, but we also have made a lot of mistakes. I think somewhere 1,000 years later, somebody reading that would be like, oh, yeah, oh my God, you guys didn't really believe in love? Okay, yeah, okay. There was still a doubt that, oh, generosity is good for you. Okay, maybe accumulation is better than circulation. Oh, did you really think that back in the days? And then they'd be like, oh, now we know that, oh, circulation is way better than accumulation, So, yeah. I would say that we saw these glimmers of the rays of great love, just sort of teenage years. I think we are in our teenage years of love's magnificence, and I hope we get into elderhood at some point. So.
Well, I'm sure that. With people like you, we have more chances to see that opportunity and create that opportunity. Nipun, thank you so much for sharing your life, your time, and so many things to chew and digest. When we finish this podcast, I always have the feeling that it's a podcast you cannot listen just once. And we always advise, go outside, maybe not for 1,000 kilometers, can be a little bit less. Take your headphones, and listen to this podcast while walking. As you said, nature always gives you back. And on a personal note, I can only wish that nature continues to be kind to you and the ones around you, to give you the needed energy to continue walking.
Thank you, and thank you both of you for being who you are, for holding these these conversations, and for being in relationship without any schemes or agendas. I think that's a beautiful thing, and I'm honored to have been here.
Thank you so much. It's been so inspiring, and really, I'm really hoping to see more generosity and love. I really think you left us with that spark and that glimmer. So thank you so much.
Keep Walking With Me. It is a podcast inspired by the walking mentorship experience. Step by step, we walk together towards the best version of ourselves. For more information about our mentoring programs, visit our website walkingmentorship.com.